you were a physics graduate.
Yeah.
Were there many female undergraduates when you first started studying?
Not a lot.
In physics?
So I think it was probably a 10-to-1 ratio, sort of men to women. So yeah, you didn't have many female friends in doing physics, and you kind of grew up. I mean, I actually went to a girls' school originally, so it went from sort of sublime to the ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when I graduated, eventually ending up in the energy sector, it felt very similar. You have energy sector was very dominated by engineers at the time. Engineers, I think, is even worse than physics. I think it's a 12-to-1 ratio in engineering.
Why do you think that is?
I just think actually we don't sell the sciences very well at a young age into schools. I also think we ask people to specialise at the age of almost 14 to decide whether they're an art student or a scientist. My personal background is I had a mother who was an artist and a father who was a scientist. I feel I'm both. I didn't want to be pigeonholed. And our education system pigeonholes us from a really young age.
Did you choose physics with that in mind? Was it a bit of an alternative offering? It was something you thought, I'm going to do physics because that's what I'm not expected to do.
I don't think so. I did it because I genuinely enjoyed it. I mean, the physics is incredibly creative, actually. I mean, it has quite a lot of philosophy in it. Some might even say theology, and a lot of science. And it's got this kind of combination. You deal with a lot of things like some of the relativity theorems that seriously we do not really understand. Quantum physics, there are a lot of things we fundamentally don't understand, yet we use these principles and create things out of them. And so for me, physics is this incredibly creative science, but it's never really explained in that way.
No.
Which I think is a real shame.
So moving on then, you go from being, one of the few female undergraduates on your course, and you then find yourself in the energy business.
Yes.
Where I'm guessing, you were the only woman in the room on other occasions.
Yeah, I mean, there'd quite often be maybe one other woman, but yes, in a room of 20 people, it would normally be me and maybe one other.
And was this a sort of high-powered meetings in political circles?
Yeah, so I sat on the board of the trade body for the energy sector at one point, and we used to go and have ministerial meetings, and all the ministers and the civil servants would all be men. And then you'd have mainly men around the table, maybe one other woman sometimes. And it was fascinating to watch, actually. You kind of see these high-level meetings and different companies taking a different view. And I always remember some of these particular ones, and they were slightly larger than life characters. And the image that always comes to mind is walruses basically fighting on the beach, kind of like.
But did you feel comfortable in that setting?
I think I did. I mean, I grew up on the side of a motor racing circuit, so I kind of was very used to watching men at work and being around men, so they didn't really faze me. I was probably surprised by how different I felt, actually. That was probably the biggest thing, is that every time you spoke or said something, you did feel like the spotlight was on you. For being the only female voice in the room. So that did put a lot of pressure on you, I think.
I mean, did you find it a fairly brutal business where people were usually the analogy of walruses, were they sort of intellectually wrestling with one another in the room? And did you feel comfortable joining in with that, or did you find the strategy was better to sit back and then make your point more pertinently at the right moment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was trying to I was always challenging the status quo, because, I mean, that's one of the reasons I set up Good Energy, was to challenge the status quo. So I was always coming in with a challenge. And so you have to see where you play your challenge card.
Yeah.
And so there were parts of conversations I probably didn't partake in, because you can't say everything all the time.
And you weren't ever sort of looked at and asked to go out and fetch the tea?
No, I wasn't. They were better than that.
They were better than that.
but there was, I mean, there was interesting. There was another physicist who used to sit on one of these boards with me. He would always, every time I said anything, he would try to take it apart intellectually. It's like, oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
So the competitive level was there.
He felt threatened, presumably.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You never know with people.
And was that at sort of we're talking about government level here?
Yeah, it was. It was with ministers and Secretary of States.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fascinating to watch and really interesting to see how they operate at that level.
Right.
And the different tactics, because different people took different approaches.